Good morning. We're learning the daf, page 27, and we're going to start from the Mishnah of page 26b in the bottom. We completed the chapter of the second chapter, which is Oisin Pasin, and we start we're starting chapter 3. The name of the chapter is Bakoil Me'arvin. Bakoil Me'arvin. So the first Mishnah establishes which types of food may be used in Eruvin Techumin, and cities other laws and cites other laws for which this rule is relevant. So we know Eruvin Techumin is to create. We're going to see it right now, but he writes in number 1. If you look, it speaks about Eruvin Chatzeros. Tosfos and other Rishonim agree, based on the Gemara, which states that in Eruvin Chatzeros must be made with bread. The Bach, the Bais Chodesh, however, points that our Mishnah is restated in the 7th chapter of our tract. So this Mishnah is going to be restated again in the 7th chapter, and that I don't think this Gemara has the 7th chapter. It's the next one, yeah.
Another volume of this.
Or maybe even the following volume.
Interesting that Rambam is very small. This parak is very small in Rambam, but anyway.
Because he just gives you the bottom line.
I'd like the rest.
And that the Gemara there understands that the Mishnah refers to Eruvin Chatzeros. Meiri adds that the legal conclusion should be drawn from Rashi's comment. The halacha clearly requires Eruvin Chatzeros too. Anyhow, Eruvin Techumin, the word Tchum means boundary. So Eruvin Techumin is to extend my reach, so to speak. To extend, if I want to walk, I go to the edge of the town, to 2,000 amos from my house, from the city limits, the town limit, and I put bread there, and it gives you another 2,000 amos. Okay? So just extending your reach, extending your walk on Shabbos. Bakoil Marvin Mishtatfin, so we may make in Eruvin Techumin and Shitufim Mavois. Shitufim Mavois is to create a few moves to make them as one, with all types of food. Chutz min hamayim min hamelach. So this was what we read before, the comments of Tosfos, the Rishonim. So they say that the Eruvin Chatzeros must be with bread. Over here, this Mishnah speaks about Eruvin Techumin, tells us that can be done with anything. Doesn't have to be bread. Now the Mishnah said, Chutz min hamayim min hamelach. You can use water and salt for Eruvin Techumin. So you have to prepare a plate with food in order to extend your walk on Shabbos, but don't use water and salt. All types of food may be purchased with Ma'aser Sheni funds. Right, Ma'aser Sheni funds is obviously money that was already redeemed from food, from produce to money, and now you can use these funds to for Eruvin Techumin.
But that Ma'aser Sheni funds were supposed to be in Yerushalayim. So how you're walking all over the place with this?
Oh, Ma'aser Sheni, you need to eat it in Yerushalayim. But if you redeemed it,
yeah.
So the food becomes regular food. The produce becomes regular.
It becomes money.
No. If you have a pound of tomatoes.
Okay.
The tomatoes were redeemed. You don't want to carry the bag of tomatoes. So you redeem the tomatoes. And now you have $20. Okay? Right. So if you can use those tomatoes for Eruvin Techumin, right. They are deconsecrated.
You redeemed them by...
Right. They are deconsecrated. They have regular food.
Fine.
Now, what about, can I use that money, the $20? $20 now that you redeemed, and you have $20 that are consecrated, right? Yeah. This $20 are Ma'aser Sheni. You're supposed to take that $20 to Yerushalayim, right, and buy food there. Exactly. Instead, you're buying food for Eruvin Techumin.
Right.
So he writes in number 4, Ma'aser Sheni, the second tithe separated from crops during the first, second, fourth, and fifth year. Shemitah cycle, the tithe must be eaten in Yerushalayim, or it may be redeemed with coins of value equal to the produce. The coins must then be brought to Yerushalayim and used to purchase food, which must be eaten within the walls of the city. The Mishnah teaches which foods may be bought with these coins. So let's see which food. So he writes, on all types of food may be purchased with Meiser Sheni funds. Oh, so it doesn't tell you to use the money of Meiser Sheni for Eruvin Tchumin. It tells you to use what type of food I can buy with the $20.
Everything but water and salt.
So he says, Chutz min hamayim v'melach, everything but water and salt.
Okay,
One who vowed to abstain from nourishing food is permitted to consume water and salt. So this guy is made a neder, a silly vow, not to eat food anymore.
Yeah.
So he's still allowed to drink water and salt. Still allowed to consume water and salt. The Mishnah rules that some foods may be used in an Eruv, even though the owner of the Eruv is forbidden to eat them. So if you made this neder not to eat food anymore, and now you put in Eruvin Tchumin food that you're not allowed to eat.
Yeah.
It's part of your neder, but you prepare the plate, Eruvin Tchumin, you put it there, and you cannot eat it.
Yeah.
He said you can still do it, even though the owner of the Eruv is forbidden to eat. We may make an Eruv for a Nazir with wine, or for Yisrael with Teruma.
So it's just sitting there as a way so you can go walk the 2,000
We may make an Eruv for a Nazir with wine, even though he can't drink it.
And the Truma that you
Or
can't eat 'cause
Truma.
you're not Kohen.
Right. Sumchus Emer B'chulin. Sumchus says only with ordinary non-Teruma foods, Ulechem Bevet HaPras, and an Eruv may be placed for a Kohen in Beis HaPras. So if you go back to the beginning, it actually tells you also over here, Beis HaPras is a field which a grave has been plowed over. We mentioned it, we learned it before a few times. Like a cemetery that was plowed.
Right.
Plowed over cemetery.
So you could put something-
Giving rise to concern that bone fragments have been scattered throughout the field. So a Kohen may not walk over the Beis HaPras for fear that he may touch or move the bone fragments to become tumah. On the biblical level, one may rely on the knowledge that the plow rarely reaches as deep as the grave, leaving the bones intact in all probability.
They're supposed to be 6 feet down. And you're not going to plow.
Since an Eruvin Tchumin establishes one's Shabbos resident and therefore must be accessible to its user, it would seem that a Kohen's Eruv placed in a Beis HaPras would be invalid. So a Kohen puts the Eruv in Beis HaPras in this plowed cemetery, plowed graves. How can he reach it? He can't reach it, so it's invalid to put it there for a Kohen.
Yeah.
So what does Sumchus tells us? Only with ordinary non-Teruma foods that you're allowed to use for the Eruv Tchumin. Ulechem Beis HaPras, and an Eruv may be placed for a Kohen in Beis HaPras. He says you're allowed to do it in Beis HaPras. Rabbi Yehuda says that Eruvin Tchumin may be placed even between the graves. If that's the place where you decide to put it, you're allowed to. Why? Going to 27a1, so it says because the Kohen can make a partition between himself and the grave and go and eat. He can create a partition. We see it till this very day. He will make a walkway for Kohanim. So Kohen can figure out some kind of a partition that he can make and be able to eat it. So therefore, we should be allowed to do it, even between the cemeteries, between the graves.
When my brother-in-law, who's a Cohen, his mother died, so they had the roads, and then you have.
I made the pathway, yeah.
And so he was able to.
Rabbi Yochanan said we cannot learn and extract categorical rulings from general rules because the rules were sometimes taught without listing their exceptions. So you can't, per se, learn from rules, from general rules. So afilu makom shene'emar b'chutz, and even where the rule concludes by saying except, that is, specific exceptions are enumerated, still we cannot assume that no other exceptions exist. The Gemara now establishes that Rabbi Yochanan's statement was made in another context, even though it applies to our Mishnah. Since Rabbi Yochanan said, even where it says except, that his statement does not refer to here, to our Mishnah, Eichakai, to where does it refer? Hosamkai, it refers to there, to a Mishnah in Kiddushin. Called mitzvahs hasei shazman groma. We learned all positive mitzvahs which are time-bound. Anoshim chayovim and anoshim pturis. Men are obligated to perform them, and women are exempt from these obligations. And those positive commandments which are not time-bound, echad noshim ve'echad anoshim chayovim. Both men and women are obligated to perform. And this is an absolute rule. And it's a famous teaching about the mitzvahs.
Right.
Women are obligated mitzvahs. Sheinas goma, men are obligated in both. All positive mitzvahs which are time-bound, men are obligated and women are exempt. Shelezman, and those positive commandments which are not time-bound, whether men or women, both obligated. And here's a klal, it's a general rule. This is an absolute rule. All positive mitzvahs that are time-bound, women are exempt from performing. Arei matzah, for example, eating matzah. Simcha v'hakil. There are the positive mitzvahs of matzah which we are commanded to eat on the first night of Pesach.
Right.
We have to be b'simcha during Yamim Tovim, during the festivals, and in the time of Hakil, which is once every...
15 years. No, 7 years.
The 8th year.
It's the 8th year, but...
The 8th year, yeah.
It goes around.
What it's called assemblage. So
right.
Mitzvah of Hakil. So it's men, noshim v'ataf. It's for everyone.
Right.
So here's 3 mitzvahs that women are obligated as well: matzah, simcha, and Hakil. Now all these mitzvahs are time bound.
Yeah. Near
why? Because matzah is only on Pesach,
near Shabbos.
And simcha is only on Yom Tov, and Hakil is only in the 8th year. So all these are time-bound mitzvahs. So your klal is not so much of a klal. Here's an exception to the klal. Right? What was the klal? If it's not time-bound, they're not obligated.
Right, now we should have 3 that
if it's time-bound, they're not obligated. So this is a time-bound mitzvah, and they are obligated.
Right. I was just thinking about near Shabbos, but they're doing us a favor by lighting the candles. It's our mitzvah, but they took it on.
Right, the mitzvah aseh shazman gomu, which are all positive mitzvahs which are time bound. V'noshim chayoves, and yet women are obligated to perform them. So the Gemara continues to demonstrate exceptions. Here's another exception to the above rule. What did we say? V'chol mitzvah shazman gomu noshim chayoves, and it is true that all positive mitzvahs which are not time bound, women are obligated to in their performance. Here's an example of a mitzvah that it's not time bound, and women are obligated or not obligated. Let's see. Here's a mitzvah that it's not time bound, and women are not obligated. For example, there are positive mitzvahs of Torah study, mitzvah of purvu, being fruitful and multiplying, and redeeming a firstborn son. All these are mitzvahs aseh shelo yazman gam. They are not bound time mitzvah. V'noshim pturis. What did we say? That all the mitzvahs that are not time bound, women are obligated, just like men. Here's an example, 3 examples. Learning Torah, Pirya Uvia, and Pidyon Haben, that women are not obligated, even though it's not a time-bound mitzvah.
Oh, no, we're showing what wasn't a time.
The reverse.
That they don't have to do. Okay, got it.
It's like weakening the klal. You said a klal. Here's the 6 examples now. 3 on each side.
Okay, cool.
We cannot learn categorical rulings from general rules. That's the first statement of the Gemara, what Rabbi Yochanan says. You cannot learn these rulings from general rules. Why? Because the rules were sometimes taught without listing their exceptions. And even where the rule states afterwards, except excluding specific cases, we cannot assume that no other exceptions exist. Maybe there are more exceptions. We also learned in this mission. There's another rule. All things that are born upon a zav, Nisa is usually being carried upon. We wrote born upon a zav, even if he does not actually touch them, al tome. To give you an example, in 11, this is a method of tumah peculiar to zav. I guess unique to a zav.
Yeah. Peculiar. Yeah.
Unique.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay.
Exclusive to him.
Yeah. Everything has shades. Yeah.
Right. No, but it seems like that's what he's implying here.
Yeah. It's to that negate to this one, but not to the other.
And zava nida and women who has given birth. Other obvious tuma who bear objects without touching. Other contaminated. But a zav renders the object rishon the tumah as if they had been touched by him. This type of tumah is generally referred to elyon shel zav, over a zav. What is over a zav? And it is derived by access from Leviticus 5:15-10 as to how this method differs from hesed. This type of tumah should not be confused with masa, carrying. The latter refers to a person who is toher, who carries certain obvious tumah, while the former refers to the reverse situation, Izah, who carries objects which are toher.
I still don't understand.
Okay. So there is somehow it's over the zav, but he's not carrying it.
So what is
you
it?
can't call it masa. You can call it elyon shel zav.
So what's the zav doing to make an object tumah if he's not touching it?
Maybe air touching it.
Oh, like the virus. Okay, whatever.
No, it's like if I'm a zav and it's right here. So my toma make this cup toma now. It's not touching it. If it's touching, then it's maso. It's a different type of. I'm carrying something. Yeah. But if it's elyoina, it's on top somehow. It's suspended somehow on top of me. Can a zav turns a tome.
Okay, all right. I guess we'll see.
All things that are born up. Oh, you see, he used the word born upon. What does mean born upon a zav? Look at the words. He says, "Kol shenisal gabe azav tome." All things that are born upon a zav, even if he does not actually touch them.
It says it remains tahar.
Are tome. Are tome.
Things that are born upon a zav, even if he did not are tame. Then
now another case. Chol shazav nisol of Torah. All things which a zav is born upon remain Torah. What does it mean? If he did not touch them. If he did not touch them. Except for things which are suitable for reclining or sitting upon, the Adam and a person, and likewise who likewise is tameh if he carries a zav. So the second case, it's something that the zav is on top of. Before, the first case spoke about things that are born upon the zav. Now there's things that are below him.
Well, that we're used to.
He says he's toher.
That?
Except for if he's on top of something that is suitable for sitting, reclining. And a person who is lakos tameh, if he carries a zav. The Gemara says, okay, that's it. That's all the klal. Maybe there are exceptions. V'tul eika, v'eika merka. What about merka? What about writing? It becomes tameh when it bears a zav. Yet it is not listed in the Mishnah. So I merka v'echid dami says the object which a zav rides on, which you mentioned. What is it like? If he sits on it when riding, it is the very case of sitting, already enumerated in the Mishnah. We meant to say this. There is the upper part of a saddle which is defiled because a zav rides on it, the upper part of the saddle, even though he clearly does not sit on it. Since this case does not belong to the category of Moshav because he's not sitting. Why was it mentioned? Tanya Ukov Tome Moshav V'atofus Tamei Merkav. For it was taught in a Baisa, the saddle of a Zav is subject to the Tuma of Moshav. The saddle of a Zav, the saddle of sitting on a horse, a donkey, is subject to the Tuma of Moshav. Of sitting, it's like a chair. We said before, suitable for reclining or sitting. And the pommel is subject to the Tuma of Merkav. It says in 16, the Tuma categories of Mishkav and Merkav. Mishkav and Merkav. Mishkav is laying down, and Merkav is riding on. Although both are Avis HaTuma, nevertheless, differ in their degree of stringency. So there will be a different stringency between Merkav and Moshav.
I don't know how to understand how he's not sitting on it, but all right.
What's so hard? You take a saddle, put it on the floor, and stand upon it.
Oh, right, like that. I'm talking about if it's on the animal.
Okay, a little pony has a...
All right, little pony. Okay, fine.
You sit upon it.
A little stupid little pony, and you're on top of it, not touching it. Okay.
Yeah, you just sit. You open your legs. You sit like this.
I see that.
It's under you.
All right.
Elashmamina, we'll learn from this, from the existence of a type of tumah omitted by the Mishnah. We cannot learn halachas by making deductions from general rules because the rules were sometimes taught without listing their exceptions. And even in place where the rule is stated and afterwards it says except. That is, even though specific exceptions are mentioned, still we cannot assume that no other exceptions exist. Amar Ravina v'yizema of Nachman. Ravina said, and some say it was of Nachman. Afanana mitinina. We also learned in our Mishnah. With all type of foods we're allowed to make the eruv techumin, except for water and salt. Also shituf mevois, connecting the alleyways together. So these two things, shituf mevois and eruv and tchumin, and eruv tchumin. V'tu leika v'ayikakmin.